What's happening, everybody? This is Intergalactic Brew. Uh, just got finished watching UFC 129. Um, Pretty good card to say the least. Um, some fights really surprised me, and then again, others didn't. But for the most part, um, every matchup was pretty. I wouldn't say spectacular. Well, with the exception of the main event, I'll say. Like every other fight besides the main event was spectacular, and I'm gonna tell you why. Which is the purpose of me doing this video, and that is that George St Pierre, okay, for some reason, this man still has that haunting thought in his head of him getting knocked out by Matt Serra 4 years ago. And for some reason, St. Pierre, over the past recent years, has developed this safe yet strategic, calculating style of I'll do damage, but I won't finish you. Like, I'll do just enough to hurt you, to punish you, but I'm not going to end it. When I mean it, I say the fight. And I just got off of Twitter, or matter of fact, I am still on Twitter right now. But when I was on Twitter, I was reading this comment by a guy who is fairly popular here on YouTube, Doug from Bill and Doug, who is also known as RVD Tito for Life. He does a lot of pro wrestling. Matter of fact, well, not just him. It's actually him and his best friend, Doug. They actually do a lot of pro wrestling videos on YouTube. Well, they did. Now they've launched their new podcast, which is very good, by the way. On podbean.com, it's called Submit to Reality. It's a pro wrestling / mixed martial arts podcast. I've listened to all 4 episodes, and it's fantastic. I would recommend anybody out there that wants to get some blunt, realistic, just cold-hearted truth about pro wrestling and mixed martial arts. I recommend you listen to those guys, because those guys are what I consider true realists. They're the voices of the hardcore wrestling fans and the hardcore MMA fans, or as I like to call it, the true MMA and pro wrestling fans like myself. They're very bold, and like I said, they're very blunt, very direct, very broad in their opinions and their philosophies going on in the world of MMA and pro wrestling. But anyway, be that as it may, I was reading one of the comments that Doug wrote on Twitter, and he was expressing his anger for how GSP seems to dominate all of his fights that he's in, but he's never able to end the fight. and he was putting some very harsh criticism on St. Pierre. And when I really sat there and thought about it as I was reading that comment, I couldn't help but to agree with him, because George St. Pierre is such a phenomenal fighter, and he has so many good skills that he doesn't put forth the effort to try and end his fights. I mean, if you really think about it, this guy is so great that he can end a fight at will. I mean, he virtually literally shuts down all of his opponents. If any of you watched the UFC 29 event tonight, you would have heard on the commentary Joe Rogan made a very key point while the fight was going on, and saying that George St. Pierre has the ability to adapt his style to his opponent's strengths. For instance, he outstrikes strikers, he outgrapples grapplers. But in the midst of all that, he still does not finish the fight. And, you know, I believe that Doug is making a good point, that if you're going to be a great champion in a combat sport, you know, or in any type of competition, you've got to win impressively. You've got to put on some impressive wins that are going to convince not only the fans, but the spectators and everybody else involved in the sport, particularly the media, that, you know, you are indeed, you know, that worthy of being called the greatest. You know, and we hear GSP say all the time, I want to become the greatest. I want to redefine, you know, mixed martial arts. Well, that's good and all, GSP, but I mean, if you're going to redefine mixed martial arts to a whole nother level, you've got to start ending these things, man. I mean, you just can't keep going the distance every single fight. I mean, I know that there are some extremely physical, tough guys out there that are hard to knock out or hard to submit, you know, but I've seen almost every GSP fight of this modern day, and all the opponents that he's faced, he pretty much is capable of either knocking out or submitting, but he's never done it, you know. And, you know, no disrespect to his opponents, because pretty much everybody he's faced has, you know, are top contenders in his division, in the welterweight division in the UFC. But the problem is, half of those guys are one-dimensional. I mean, it's the truth. You look at Thiago Alves, I love him to death, one of my favorite UFC fighters of all time. One-dimensional, Muay Thai striker, okay? He's supposed to be a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but he never uses it because he relies mostly on his striking ability, okay? Then you got Josh Koscheck, another one of my favorite UFC fighters in the welterweight division. Great wrestler, but again, one-dimensional. His striking has vastly improved, although I think he needs to incorporate more kicks, knees, and combination punches in his striking arsenal. Not just a lucky looping overhand right. You know? Again, one-dimensional. Okay? Dan Hardy, another great Muay Thai striker. You know? Is supposed to be polishing up his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skills. Okay, but virtually he's one-dimensional. You know, John Fitch, Another great wrestler. Again, one-dimensional. Improved striking. Okay submissions, but still, he's one-dimensional. He's good at taking guys down, controlling them, grounding and pounding them, and basically wearing them out. That's it. So, the question is, now that we found out that GSP virtually doesn't have any killer instinct, who is going to be that one opponent, or who's going to be that one guy, that's going to step up and really, force this guy to really fight and really show that killer instinct that I know that he has and actually finish a fight? Well, there's two people I can think of. And one of them Doug was mentioning in his Twitter comment, Nick Diaz, which I think would be a very suitable opponent for GSP, because Nick Diaz is real hardcore. He's a badass. Yeah, he is. Y'all know it. Y'all know he is. And he's probably just as well-rounded, if not more well-rounded, than GSP. He's got phenomenal boxing skills. He's a stellar grappler, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt under Cesar Gracie. Has tremendous conditioning, physically tough, can take a lot of punishment, and still continue to fight. He's very bold. He tries to get into his opponent's heads. I mean, I think he'd be probably the perfect opponent for GSP. Then another guy that I think would probably match up well with St. Pierre, who I might add is another well-rounded fighter himself, is the natural-born killer Carlos Condit. Now that would be an interesting fight, seeing that George St. Pierre and Carlos Condit both train with Greg Jackson. Now, if Condit should be the next guy to get a title shot, if he beats Dong Young Kim, how will that play out? Will that be another Rashad Evans, John Jones type of deal? Will Condit leave Greg Jackson's team and go to another training facility to prepare for that fight? Who knows? But the bottom line is GSP's got to win a fight. He can't keep playing this, strategic, safe style. He's got to have that killer instinct. He's got all the tools to do it. He's just got to get some balls, and he needs to forget about Matt Serra, and he needs to go out and he needs to, needs to finish these guys. Because that's the only way he's going to get the true credit that he deserves, and that's the only way that he's going to be considered a real pound-for-pound best fighter in the world. So, I don't know when it's going to happen, but it needs to happen. And it needs to happen before time runs out, because it's slowly creeping up on GSP. So, whoever his next few opponents are, he needs to practice on ending the fight and stop trying to play it too safe. He needs to be more aggressive, way more aggressive. I mean, you're the champion, for crying out loud, GSP. Come on. Seriously? Come on. And then you just fought Jake Shields tonight, another one-dimensional fighter. Stellar jiu-jitsu fighter. And he was striking you out a little bit in the 5th round. Obviously, he busted up your eye and your nose. How you gonna let Jake Shields, start to outstrike you a little bit? That doesn't make any sense. Finish the fight, GSP. That's all I got to say.